Hi everyone, Nicholas Buffett here from the Junior and Senior School here in Nicosia, Cyprus, back with another video tutorial, in fact a series of tutorials in Excel, and these are going to be primarily focused, but not only for students taking the IGCSE ICT exam, the Cambridge exam, and the course code is 0417. Now in paper 3, the practical paper 3, you have the component spreadsheets, and that's what I'm basically going to be covering. In these video tutorials, I'm going to cover nearly all the practical skills you require. And I say nearly because there are always new skills required in these examinations. And through these tutorials, you should be able to cover practically everything that you're required for that examination. This is going to be the first in the tutorial, and it's going to be just a basic introduction to Excel, some basic functions, moving around Excel, understanding the Excel interface. Okay, so I've opened Excel here and I have the ability here to create a new blank workbook. It's called a workbook because inside an Excel file you can have many sheets. So when I click on this, it will begin a new workbook for me. There we go. I'm just going to zoom this in a little bit for you. Okay, so essentially this is the interface, and we can see that a Excel worksheet, and this is called sheet 1. I can add new sheets by clicking on the plus sign. And if I double click on a tab of a worksheet, I can call it something else, say my work, press enter. Oh, I forgot the Y, so I'm just going to double click to modify that. There we go, and press enter. So you can add as many sheets as you want. Okay, the interface of Excel looks like this. So you have columns and you have rows. And notice that columns are labeled with letters and rows are labeled with numbers. The intersection of a column and a row is known as a cell. This is a cell. And a cell, when it is selected, in other words, you click on it, you get an outline, a green outline of that cell. And you will notice here that you also get this little square, this little filled in square here in the corner. Now that there is known as the fill handle. Okay, I'm going to use some of my inking here just to make this easier. So that there is going to be your fill handle right there. Okay, now the fill handle, we're going to see later on how it can be used. Essentially, it will help you save time by filling in cells in as you're going to create calculations or you want to repeat something. It's very easy to use the fill handle. Now, when we're going to refer to a cell, we must always refer to the cell with the letter first and the row number second. So this cell here, the active cell, is actually referred to as D3 because it's in column D, row 3. Referring to it as 3D is wrong. So that will be wrong, that will be correct. We never refer to a cell with the number first, with the row, always by column first. Okay, next at the top we have the formula bar. So this area here is the formula bar, and this is really, really useful when you want to see if the contents inside the cell is a constant or a variable, and we're going to look at that in a second. Next, at the bottom, on the bottom right corner, you've got the zoom feature, so you can zoom in and out by moving this slider. There it is. And you can also do that much easier if you're using the control button on your keyboard. Hold that pressed, and then use the wheel on your mouse to go backwards and forwards, and that will zoom in and out. Okay, so let's have a look at how we can insert rows and columns. So I'm just going to add some random data here. Okay, I'm just going to copy that using my fill handle, like I said before. As I said, we're going to talk about this in a minute. So if I want to put a new column between B and C, the easiest way always is going to be right click. So if I right click on C and choose insert, it will add a new column to the left of C, and that becomes C. If I want to delete a column, I can right click on it and delete. If I want to insert a row, I can right click on the row and choose insert. Now you've also got other ways of doing this, and just like with any other application, there are 20 ways of doing the same thing. I'm just going to show you a couple of ways or one way, and then you probably figure out the rest as you're using Excel. So the best way to learn is to actually practice. If you have a look in the home ribbon at the top, so we've got the ribbons here. When I have a row selected and go here, I can go to insert, And I could put insert sheet rows. That's another way of adding. And with the rows selected, I can actually delete rows. And this is exactly the same with columns. Okay, so how do we select the row and the column? Well, if we click on the number, it will select the row. Click on the column, it selects the column. Okay, our next step is going to be adjusting the width of a column and a row, the height of a row. Now, if I delete this, I'll just show you something. Right, so if I type here, this is my first spreadsheet. That would help if I spelled it correct. Okay, now we can see that I've entered this data, and I'm going to show you entering data again in a second. I've entered this data in cell A1. Okay, now when I enter the data in cell 1, we can see in the formula bar what's inside that cell. But we can see because it doesn't fit in that cell, it's going over cells B and C. There's no content in B, there's no content in C, well actually B1 and C1. If I click on B1, I can add some other data. For example, I'll just type my name. And we can see now, because I've typed the data in the cell where A1 was going over, A1 is now being chopped off. So the way that we can remedy this, there are two ways. We can either go between the two columns which are affected A and B, place my mouse right there where we get this crosshair, and I can click and drag to make that column wider. Or the other way is I can place again my mouse between the two columns and double click. And that will automatically adjust the column width to the largest entry in that column. What do I mean by the largest entry? So if I type something else here, just some random text, which is in column A, this text takes more space than this one. So if I double click here, it's going to adjust the size of that column so that it takes the maximum entry. Now this can be good, this can be bad sometimes. So you're going to decide on this depending on the layout of your spreadsheet. So I'm going to select this cell and delete it. Okay, now with numbers, it's exactly the same thing, but there is something you need to see because it confuses quite a few of my students. If you have numerical data in here, let's say, I don't know, whatever the number that is, and I make this column slightly smaller and make it small enough so it doesn't fit, in this case, you're going to get this numerical data, okay? Or sometimes you might even get, let's just try and make hashtags. Now, this essentially means that the data inside A1 is numerical data, and the column width is not wide enough to display the whole data. Now with text, it does. It allows you to go over the empty cells. But with numbers, it doesn't, because if you chop off, let's say 1, 0, let's say this was covered here, then that will be a difference of, let's just make this a number which will be easier to see, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. So that's 1,000,000. If my column width was chopped off here, that would look like 100,000, and you wouldn't be able to know that. Okay, so if the column A actually finished at this point there, you would see this numerical value here, and there's no way you knowing whether it's 100,000, whether it's 1,000,000, or whether it's 10 million. Okay, so it will do the effect I just showed you. It would try and show you the shortened version, and if that doesn't fit, it's going to show you the hashtags. Okay, let's have a look at selection methods. Now, selection methods are this. So if I click on a cell, I select this cell. That's B1. If I click and drag, I select a range of cells. Now, a range of cells can be defined or referred to with two cell addresses. The first one is the top left corner, and that's going to be B2. We can see that's in B2. And the next one is the bottom right diagonal, and that's C4. So to refer to this cell range, we would need to refer to it as B2, colon, a full colon, C4. Okay. We can only select ranges which are rectangular. So for example, we cannot select the range which looks like this. that range cannot be selected in one go. We would actually have to select it into two portions. So this will be here two rectangles, this large rectangle A and this cell here B. Okay, so to create multiple selections, we're going to use the control button on our keyboard. So if I select this area and then hold the control button on my keyboard and select another area, I'll just make a bigger selection. Essentially what we have is this rectangle here and then another rectangle here. And we would refer to this like this. So this is B2. This is the bottom right diagonal C4. This one here is D3. The bottom right diagonal here is E4. So to write or to refer to both these ranges in one go, we would write this like this. B2 full colon C4 comma D3 full colon E4. Okay, so that comma will separate these two ranges. Okay, great. So now let's begin with data entry. How do we add data and what are the different types of data that we have? So first of all, we have to understand the two types of data that we have. We have constant values and we have variables. And variables can be split up essentially into two subcategories: calculations, and you've also got functions. Now, we're going to have a look at both of these today so that we can understand what these are. Because the beautiful thing about Excel, the main concept of Excel, is the fact that it can actually automatically recalculate data. So let's have a look at this. So the first thing I'm going to do is I'm going to type something inside A1. I'm just going to type, let's say, a title, first name. Now, when I click inside the cell and I start typing, we can see I get the insertion point. Now, that insertion point basically means that I'm in edit mode for that cell. I'm entering data inside this cell. I haven't put the data in yet because I haven't entered it. If I press the escape key on my keyboard, that entry is cancelled. So let's say I had some data in before, and now I select A1 and I start typing first. And then I decide, I don't want to do that. I don't want to enter this data. I don't want to put this data in the box. I press escape and it cancels it. Okay, and we can see the previous data. Now, if I want to delete something, I'm going to select and press delete, and now I'm going to type again. So first name. This is, let's say, a title. So enter the data into the cell. The easiest way is to press the enter key. And if I press enter, there you go. That's been entered. When I click on this cell again, I'm not in edit mode because I don't have the insertion point. I'm in selection mode, so I've simply selected that cell. If I double click on it, I'm back in edit mode. Okay. If I press escape, I'm out of edit mode. Now, when I click on a cell and I select it in the formula bar, I can see what's inside that cell. Well, you can say, well, these two are exactly the same. This is the case when the data entered is a constant. A constant is a value that cannot change unless the user changes it manually. So if I was to type here, let's see, QTY for quantity, and I type here a name, and here I'm just going to put quantity 10. All of these entries here are known as constants. So you can see here, I click on first name, it shows first name. This is a number, numerical data, 10, and it shows 10. So all of these are constants. Notice here that the text is aligned to the left by default and numbers are aligned to the right by default. Now, this is a default setting in Excel. I always tell my students, do not mess with this setting because it will really, really help you. If you've got a whole load of numbers and one of these are written wrong, okay, then it will also identify because that number, there you go. Now this here is seen as text and not numbers. It's not numerical data. And I can see that visually because it's aligned to the left. these two are aligned to the right, and that's because both of these are seen as numerical data. The reason this isn't numerical data is because I used a capital O here. So to make sure that you can visually confirm the data that you want is correct, you have this default alignment process. Okay. Have you ever had a temporary password given to you and sometimes you just can't tell whether it's an L, a capital I, a 1, a 0, or an O? Well, this alignment feature in Excel actually helps you visually see what it's supposed to be. Okay, so these are constants. Let's take this back. So what's a variable? We're going to look at variables in a short while when we're going to be doing some calculations. But just to show you very, very quickly, if I was to put another number here, 22, and in this cell, I'm going to enter a function, or actually a calculation. I want to enter in here the addition or the sum value of these two numbers here. Now, to do this, you're going to use the equal sign. Most people don't know the reason why we use an equal sign, but straight after this, I'll explain. I'm going to use the equal sign, and I'm going to say I'm going to add whatever is inside B2 with whatever is inside the cell B3. Now, I can do this manually, B2 plus, or I can simply click on the cell. Much easier. You avoid many mistakes by doing this. And that will add the cell reference. Can you see? B2 plus B3. Now, when I press enter, there's my result. Now, if we notice up here in the formula bar now, what is inside the cell, the value 30, is not what is seen in the formula bar. In the formula bar, we actually see the formula. So this is known as a variable of type calculation. Okay, so this is essentially a calculation because we've entered a calculation in here. I'm going to show you the equivalent of this using a function. Now, a function is a calculation essentially, but it's a predefined calculation and it's given a name so that we can, instead of having to type or use or write the calculation out manually, we could just call the function name and it will apply the calculation for us. For example, to add numbers together, we simply have to use the sum function. Now, you've got the sum feature up here, but I don't like using these shortcuts. I like my students understanding and knowing how to enter functions manually, because this helps them understand the structure of the function. So I'm going to put equals, and I'm going to type the function sum. Now, straight after I put the equals and I start typing, it will show me the possible functions I want. Here's the one I want, sum. So I can double click on this here, and this will open the brackets and display a help at the bottom. And this help shows me what parameters the function sum requires so that it can work. And it says number 1, number 2, so on and so forth. So number 1 is going to be this one, comma. You can see in the parameters here, it's got number 1, comma, and then number 2. So I'm going to put comma. And then I'm going to click on the second one, that one there, and then close the brackets. Now, when I press enter, I get the same number. So this is a variable of type calculation. And this is a variable of type function. Okay, so I've simply used functions. Now, we're going to see later on in other tutorials that these are going to be interconnected together because we can use the result of a function or a calculation in another calculation or in another function. So, for example, I can use here equals the result of this function. Now you can see here it just says B5. It doesn't put the function because this is going to use, the function is just the result. It's a number and the number is 32. And I can use that result as it is without having to type the function again. Multiplied by, multiplied not equals, multiplied by this one here. Okay, so this is a calculation. Now, if I press enter, what that does, it has taken this value, which is the result of this function here, sum B2 to B3, and it's multiplying it to the constant, this one here. And we end up essentially with a calculation created from a function. Okay, now if you can see, when I click on a cell which contains a calculation or a function like this one, When I click on the formula bar, and this is a fantastic feature, when I click on the formula bar here, it shows me in color code which cells are being used to create this function. And that gives me visual confirmation of what I've selected is correct. So if we look here in blue, it says B5, so the blue cell is B5, multiplied by B2. There we go, the red one, B2. If I click in the cell now with the function displayed, it will actually show me the color code here as well. And this is also useful because now I can relate in my worksheet what is being used to create this function. Now from here, of course, I can edit, or I can press escape to cancel. Okay, so since we've started functions, let's carry on with a few more functions to show you. Before showing you some more calculations, we need to understand the hierarchy of maths. Now, it's the same as mathematical calculations. So this calculation here, let's write it here, 2 to the power of 2 multiplied by 3 brackets, I want a plus there, plus 4 divided by 2. So the hierarchy of maths is going to say that exponentiations or powers are dealt with first, then multiplication and division. So actually, my apologies, first exponentiations, then brackets, then multiplication and division, and then plus and minus. Okay, so this will actually do this function. It's going to do, first of all, what's in the bracket, and first do this part here. 2 to the power of 2 is 4, multiplied by 3. It's going to calculate the bracket, that's 12. Then it's going to do this here. 4 divided by 2, that's going to be 2, and it's going to add that to 12, and that's going to equal to 14. Okay, now if I wanted to do this part plus 4 and then divide by that by 2, I would need to put extra brackets here. Okay, so these brackets take priority before the division. Okay, so if I wanted to write these symbols, so the power of is this symbol, multiplication is an asterisk, division is a slash, plus, minus, and of course we've got brackets, which is priority in between here. Okay, so let's just do that calculation so you can see how that can be done. Okay, so to write this out, I'm going to come here and I'm going to put equals. Now, why do we put equals? I said I was going to explain this. So in a calculation like 5 equals to 2 plus 3, we have two sides of this equal sign. We've got the left side and we've got the right side. And essentially the equal sign here means that the left side is equivalent to the right side. So when we're going to add an equal sign in a cell, we're saying that the left side is equal to the right side. So if I was to do this, 5 plus 3, on the right side, actually, let's make it the same one, 2 plus 3, so that looks the same. On the right side, we've got this, the 2 plus 3. But what's on the left? Well, on the left is actually the cell, the active cell you're typing the answer in. So it's actually D2 equals to 2 plus 3. Okay, so if I press that now, that function which I entered was actually D2 equals to 2 plus 3. And that's where that equal sign comes in. Okay, so that's why you use an equal sign. Most people think you have to put an equal sign before every function. That's not true, and you shouldn't do that because it will cause errors. Okay, so we're going to start off with equals, because we're saying D2 equals 2. We're going to open the brackets, and that's going to be 2 to the power of 2. So that's 2 to the power of 2 multiplied by 3, close the brackets, plus 4 divided by 2. Okay, and that should give me the value 14 as we calculated before. There we go, so that works. And again, if you want to modify this, you can always click on the cell, click in the formula bar, modify from the formula bar, or click back in the cell and modify from the cell. I prefer modifying from the formula bar because sometimes when you've got a lot of data in your Excel sheet, it gets a little bit tricky to modify here because your calculation will take up a longer line. Okay, so let's have a look at some other functions. Okay, so I've got a spreadsheet here for you, and I'm going to be doing some calculations here so you can have a look. And after this, we're going to do some formatting of cells and values, and that will be it for this tutorial. So let's begin. Here I've got a simple grade book, and all of these items I've got here are all constant. So I've simply typed them in, and you can see some of these I've selected and using the bold feature here to actually emphasize those. There's nothing here which is a calculation. We can see that in the formula bar, and I haven't even adjusted the column widths. So let's have a look at adding some functions to this grade book. So first of all, I'm going to double click between A and B so that column A takes the maximum size here, the maximum width. And here, what I want to do is I'm going to calculate the average of these three tests for the student Tom. So in F2, I'm going to start saying F2 equals 2. And this time we're going to look at the function average. So the function average, there it is there. I can either complete typing it and open brackets. And it shows me in the help here the parameters are just add the numbers. Well, I can, instead of just clicking on each number one by one, pressing comma like this, that would work. And closing the brackets and pressing enter, that gives me the average. But if you have many numbers, that gets a little bit tricky. So I'm just going to use the drag or the selection method for a range. So again, equals to average, open bracket, and I'm simply going to click and drag this range of cells. Okay, close that, and you can see it's going to do the average of all the numbers in the cell range B2 to D2. Press enter, or you can also press the arrow keys. If I press the down arrow key, it will enter the information, enter that function, and move down. If I press the right arrow key, it enters the data and moves right. So it really depends on how you're filling in your data. Now, I'm going to show you how you can use the fill handle to actually complete data automatically. I'm not going to explain how this works in this video. In another video, which will be titled Relative, Absolute, and Mixed Referencing, you will get a good understanding of how this actually works and how Excel figures this out. But what I can do, instead of typing the average function again and again for each student, I can select the cell which has the correct function, place my mouse over that little fill handle here, click, drag down, and let go. And it should calculate everything for me. Now, whenever you use the fill handle, it's a good idea to click on one of the items you copied. I like somewhere in the middle, this one. Then click in the formula bar and see which cells are being used in this calculation. And we can see here it's using the cells for Harry, test 1, test 2 in the exam, and that's correct. So I'm happy with the way the fill handle has worked. Okay, now here what I'm going to do is show you how to do a sum function where we're going to sum something which is in one cell and another cell. So we're going to use basically the comma. So equals to, and I'm going to use sum, that one. And I want to give my students a bonus of 3% or 3 marks if they have been doing their homework. Now, some of you which are a little bit more advanced, you're going to think about, we can use the if function for this, but we're not that advanced yet. So we're just going to use the basic function. So we're going to look wherever there's a yes, and we're going to say, if there's a yes here, we want the answer in final grade to be whatever the average is, plus whatever's inside bonus. Okay, close the brackets and press enter. Now, in this case, without using any function, I can't simply do this because it's going to give me some errors. Again, 2 errors are going to happen. One, it's going to give bonuses to the people that have a no, but also it's going to give me some other errors, which again, we will look at when we look at relative, absolute, and mixed referencing. So I'm going to have to do these manually. So equals to the sum of, oops, my bad, let's just click there, the sum of open brackets, well, actually, I don't want a sum there, do I? Because they're not going to get a bonus. That's a 0. So I'm going to press delete, and I'm going to say that equals to whatever's inside here. They don't get a bonus. Same with this one. This student didn't do his homework, so equals to G4 equals to whatever is inside F4. And in this one, they did do the homework, so it's going to be equals to whatever's inside F4 plus a bonus. Okay. What did I do? What did I do? So I'll put a bracket there. I don't need that. So if I close the bracket when I didn't open a bracket, that's mathematically wrong. Okay, down at the bottom, I'm going to show you the function max. Max, min, difference, and average. So I'm going to go here and I'm going to type equals to, and I'm going to type the function max. Now max will return the largest number in the selection. So if I select these numbers here, it will return, so there's my range, the maximum from the cells B2 to B5, press enter, and you see the largest number is 96. Now if I had another number somewhere else, I could do this, equals to max, open brackets, select this, and let's say I wanted to include these numbers also, I can press comma and select these numbers as well. This doesn't make sense, but in case you did. And if I also wanted to add my own number in there somewhere, let's say I also wanted a number, say 88, so it's going to return the largest number from all the numbers in B2 to B5, all the numbers in F2 to F5, and the number 88. Close that, and we'll see that the largest number is actually 96, and 96 is this one here. Okay, so I'm just going to do this properly now, and I'm going to say this is equals to max these numbers here. Close the brackets, press enter. Here we've got the min function, so I'm going to press equals. Min will return, yep, the smallest number. So from this one here, we're going to do the smallest, and that's going to be 44. And we can see that is the smallest number. Difference is actually, now this is where you have to think a little bit smart. We're not going to use a function, but the difference between the highest and the smallest is going to be this one minus this one. So we can just simply do equals to this one minus whatever's inside B10. So it takes the contents of B9 and subtracts it from the contents of B10. Notice we're using the cell references. I never do this. Equals to 96 minus 44. It gives me the correct answer, but that is defeating the purpose of Excel. Let's say we realize that here, this student was marked wrongfully. So his actually this student here, 44, his actual grade wasn't 44, it was 74. Now, when I press enter, we see that this has changed, but this hasn't, because this is using constant values, and that won't be able to change unless I manually change it. Okay, so in that case, if I was doing it correct, let's just undo that, escape and undo, equals to that one minus B10, press enter. Now, if I realize this student did something wrong, and that's actually a 74, when I press enter, that value is going to change as the smallest, but this one's also going to change. And that is a beautiful thing about Excel, the automatic recalculation. Okay, and if I want to find the max including the number 95, well, I'm not going to do all of these. You can figure some of these out, but if I do equals to max, and this is essentially all the numbers from here, but I also want to include the number 95. So this is like the previous example. I'm going to press comma and put 95. So this is going to find all the largest numbers between B2 and B5 and the constant 95. Okay, now if I want to do the same for the rest, I'm not going to bore you by doing them all one by one. In this case, we can select all of these, simply use the fill handle and drag it along. And it will do all of them correctly. And to make sure, I'm going to click on some of these. I'm going to click on this one, and that's showing me the max, there it is there, of this range here. Correct. Press escape. This is going to be, there you go, max of this, including 95. That's correct. So that fill handle has worked. Okay, the next part I'm going to go into is formatting numbers and formatting cells. Well, not numbers, formatting data and formatting cells. So let's say this here was actually money. It wasn't a grade. Then what I'm going to do is I can select, and this is the golden rule, always select, then do. So I'm going to select these numbers here. Let's say these ones. And I'll hold the control button to select this range as well. and I want to convert this to currency. Now at the top in the ribbon, we can see we have the different sections. And these sections have got these little arrow tabs here. Now this will open up a dialog box. Doesn't matter which one you click on. Essentially, if I click on alignment, for example, we can see here we've got the tabs. Number, we've got alignment, which is this one. We've got font, which is this one. Number is here. So this same dialog box is the same one that opens. It just opens the appropriate tab. So in this case, what I want to do, I want to go to the tab number, and I've got different types of numbers I can use. In this case, if I want currency, I simply select currency, choose how many decimal places. Well, currency should only ever be 2 decimal places. But I could also choose how I want negative numbers to be displayed. So do I want them to be red? Do I want them red with a minus sign? Do I want them to be black or black with a minus sign? You decide what you want. I'm going to put it red with a minus sign. Click OK. And one thing I didn't do, let's do that again. So I'm going to put it as currency. There we go. And change the symbol as well. So if I wanted a different symbol, you can go. I mean, there are so many symbols here. It's ridiculous. So I'm not going to go through all of these. I'm just going to put a pound, sterling pound, the UK pound there, and click OK. And you can see all of these numbers which are selected now have a currency format. The data hasn't changed. If I select this cell here, B2, if I look up here, what's inside is just the number 84. What's changed is how Excel will display it. Okay, other things that we can do with numbers. So if I select this range of cells again and hold the control, I can go to number, and we've got different ways of selecting, different things that we can select. I'm going to show you date. Now, you're not really going to convert a test grade into a date, but what I want to show you is that every piece of data in Excel is actually numeric. So if I make it a date field, you can see it actually converted these into dates. Again, I'm not going to go into the details as to why it chooses that date. Okay, so the other thing I want to show you is, let's just change these back now to normal numbers, just the number with 2 decimal places. If I want more decimal places, I can increase. Now, of course, we've got at the top the shortcuts as well, where we can add decimal places and remove. But as I said, I prefer my students use the dialog boxes because you will see many more functions that you can do when you're looking for the function you want. Now, if you're going to be rounding, for example, you can see here 83.33. As I reduce the number of decimal places, 83.3 will be rounded down to 83. If this was 83.5, let's put a value in here instead, a constant. So I'm going to put 83.5. It's going to, when I round that down, it's actually going to round up from 83.5 to 83 to 84. Let's do some formatting of cells. Now, if I want to make some of these things stand out a little bit, I can select my cell, and I'm going to use the control button as well to make the vertical selection as well. And I've got my simple fill bucket here where I can choose a fill color just to make things stand out a little bit. Now, I've got what's known as text wrapping. So if I was going to have this title here, which says average including the number, just to make that really long. This wouldn't help if I did this. So if I was to have all of this, I'm using all of this space here just because of this one long entry. So the way I can remedy this and keep it within the column is to use what's known as text wrapping. Now, text wrapping is essentially, as you use Microsoft Word, when you get to the end of the line and you carry on typing, it goes to the next line. That's actually wrapping the text round. Okay, if you remember the old typewriters, you used to type, flip over, and as you flipped over, it will just go to the next line, and that's wrapping the text. So we want to wrap this text within the cell. Now, to do this, you need to select again and then do. So I'm going to apply text wrapping to all of these cells. At the top, if I click on any one of these, essentially I want the alignment tab. So you can see here I've got font number, here's the alignment, and here's wrap text. So all of these selected cells will be wrapped. If I click on that and click OK. Now nothing's happened. Nothing's happened because this cell is actually long enough to fit everything in. When I actually reduce the size or the width of this column to that, you're going to say, well, where's the rest of it? Well, now I need to increase the height of that row. There you go. And that's actually wrapping the text round for me. So average, including the number 100. That makes my spreadsheet a little bit tighter, makes everything fit instead of having these really wide columns. Okay, so that's the first thing you can do. The top one, the top row, what I'm going to do is show you some other formatting. I'm going to select that top row. I'm going to go to alignment again, and this time I'm going to add a vertical effect to my text. So I'm going to move the degrees here by 90 and do that, and that will give you this. Now, if I select all of these columns now and double click, so if I was to select only this one here and double click, look what happens. It adjusts the width of that column to the maximum entry. But instead of having to click on all of them at the same time, I'm going to select all my columns, double click between any two columns, and it's going to adjust all of them for me in one go. If you want to adjust to keep the equal width for all of them, with all my cells selected, all my columns, if I click and drag between any two columns, let's say this big, all of these will have the exact same width. So I can either adjust them manually at the same time. Oh, look at those hashtags. That basically means these cells are not wide enough to show the numerical data. You see, we've got the functions, we've got the constants. So I need to select these now and just make them a little bit bigger, or I'm going to double click. There we go. And I can do the same with the rows as well. So if I select this tab in the corner, this selects everything. Okay, so that's the same as pressing Control A. And if I double click between columns, all the columns will adjust. If I double click between rows, all my rows will adjust as well. So if these were like this, you see they're a bit big, double click, they all adjust for me automatically. The last thing really I'm going to show you is the normal formatting. So I'm just going to select these here, turn them back to 0 degrees there, so they're horizontal. I'm going to select all of my table, double click, expand. Oh, there we go. It's just all of my table, double click to expand to show everything correctly. Let's have a look at formatting borders. Now, borders will help you essentially track numbers, especially in long sheets. So if I go to see what this looks like right now, File, Print, I can see the print preview. And you can see my preview essentially doesn't have any borders. So sometimes it's going to be hard to track numbers going across. So let's go back. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to show you how to section this off. I'm going to select, first of all of this. Now, anything I do now will be applied to all of this selection. Here we go. At the top, we've got the borders section here, where I can click. I can choose any one of these prefixed ones, for example, all borders. And that's going to give me borders on all of the selection, horizontal, vertical, the outside border, and the internal grid lines. The internal grid lines are the lines within the table. You've also, let's do that selection again. You've also got the ability to remove borders. And I always suggest never format your table or your spreadsheet until you've finished with it, because you're going to end up adding borders, removing borders. So you can use this feature here and use some of these. You can go to all the way down at the bottom and go to more borders, or you can, if you want, simply use any one of these tabs here, say number, and then choose border. And this gives you the dialog box for borders much faster. So this menu is the same as going to this menu, going to the bottom and clicking more borders. Okay, so there's multiple ways of finding things in any Office application. Okay, so with this selection here, what I want to do, I want to put a thick, so I'm going to choose a thick line here. I'm going to choose, let's say, a red border so it stands out. Probably not going to look very nice. And then I'm going to choose where I want to put these borders. So I'm going to either click on the outside, and this is for the selection, or you can use the shortcuts around here, for example, outline. So that's going to give me, let's do OK. That's going to give me, if I click away, a thick red line around that selection. Okay. Now I'm going to select this again, and I'm going to go to my border, and in the internal lines, I want to have a thinner dashed blue line. Now again, you can either click inside here, or you can use these shortcuts, or I can click here to add them. Click OK, and there you go. I've now got a thick red line and thin blue dashed lines in the middle. If I go to File, Print, there you go. That will actually show. Okay, that's what's going to print. Okay, the last thing, and this is why I say it's always best to essentially do your formatting at the end. Okay, so let's say I have this column here, and this column I want it to be of different formatting, or I need to select this one now, and then I can change that formatting. So I'm going to use the other method now from here, and I'm going to take away the formatting, so no borders, and that leaves me this gap. And if I now want these tables here to be set, I now have to go back again, format this table so I can leave that blank line. So border, and I'm going to put this thick line here. Can you see how tedious it's going to be? And then I'm going to have to do the same here. And this is why it's always good. And if I want to remove the fill from here, no fill, and that gives me this break between these two tables. Okay, so it would have been better if I had this column here first and then formatted these tables individually. You can format multiple sections as well. So let's say I'm going to select that, hold the control button, actually just select that part there, hold the control button and that. And now what I'm going to do, I can change the feel of that, for example, make that orange. So you can modify multiple selections, and you can also change the borders of multiple selections as well. Let's just do that, just so we can have a complete tutorial. Borders, and this time I'm going to change everything to a green color, and I'm going to put a thick inside and out, and there we go. Okay, so you can modify multiple selections. That's it for this tutorial. It's a basic tutorial, some simple functions there and some simple formatting. If you have learned something new and you found something interesting, or you just want to follow all the next tutorials that are going to be coming up, make sure you subscribe and make sure you click a like. See you in the next tutorial.